Welcome to my channel. Today I'd like to show you how to use masking tape as a resist when you're doing fabric painting. And this is fantastic if you are wanting to create borders and things, because your masking tape can mask off these areas really easily and allow you to do borders very quickly. So if I was just to take normal pieces of masking tape, you could run them as patterns, as a series of zigzags across a piece of fabric, or you could actually do something a little bit more complicated. So I'd like to show you this piece that I have already prepared here, where I have stuck down, as you can see, a band around the outside edge of this square of fabric, and then I've cut out some little triangles which I have placed all over. Now, what is very important when you're working with this technique is that you make sure that you actually rub down or burnish the edges really well, because if you are working and perhaps have left it overnight, the edges will tend to lift off the fabric simply because it's not as it's not as adhesive as if it was on another piece of paper or on a smooth surface. Fabric's got texture. So make sure that you've rubbed the edges down really, really well. And in this instance where I'm working with a lot of tiny little shapes, like these little triangles, I'm actually not going to use a brush to paint the fabric paint on, because if I was brushing left to right, the chances are I might hook up some of these edges and then I'd get a bit of bleeding underneath. I'm not specifically worried about too much bleeding, but obviously I don't want too much. So I have on my little palette here, I've got some white liquid here, which is called Extender. You'll see if I rub it on my skin that it's completely colorless. And this is the base of fabric paint. It's a textile screen printing medium. It's transparent, and normally they mix pigment into that to create color. So I have here some navy blue fabric paint, which for what I'm wanting to do with this piece that I'm going to color now is too dark. So look at the magic. If I now take some of this navy blue and I start to mix it down into the extender, instead of doing what white would do and turn this color into a pastel, it actually just makes my color a little bit more transparent. So it's a little bit as if you were putting food coloring from the bottle, which is very dark and concentrated, and then you slowly add water and it makes this color less intense. Okay, so now I've got a color, unlike the original navy, which is not as intense as the first one. So I'm very happy with that. And what I'm going to do now, because I want a soft background for this particular application, is I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to apply paint onto a dry sponge. You don't want to be working with water, because water will once again go underneath the masking tape, and I want to avoid that. So I'm using the smooth side of the sponge, and all I'm going to do now is dab at 90 degrees. Look at this lovely color. Very, very happy with that. So I've still got the navy, but it's not as intense as originally. And now I'm going to just put a bit more paint on here. Because I'm dabbing at 90 degrees, it's very, very hard for me to be able to go underneath the fabric. So I'm not going to have too much damage. What I'm going to have to be careful of, because I moved the fabric to show you, is just to wipe this up so that I don't get color coming from underneath the fabric. So just be aware of that. So I'm just going to move my fabric so it's on top of my sheet of glass. You could work on a sheet of paper, but I find the best thing would be newspaper, and it's very distracting when I'm doing paint because you keep seeing the print that's underneath and you're trying to read it while I'm showing you. So I thought I'd be better off working with a piece of glass, but I've just got to be careful I'm not picking paint from underneath the actual fabric where the masking tape is not. So I'm just going to dab this lightly all over. And as I say, I'm very, very pleased with this color that I've managed to mix up. What you will need to do once your fabric paint is dry, and please don't start lifting the tape off before it's drier. It's much easier to do when it is bone dry, otherwise you sometimes have the fabric flipping over on itself and then it actually makes marks where you shouldn't be doing it. So once it's completely dry, all fabric paint needs to be heat set. So you need to actually iron it with a hot dry iron, or you could put it in some tin foil and bake it in your oven if you were doing a large piece like maybe a tablecloth. but it is necessary that it's heat set just to set the color in. It's pretty much like if you have a stain on your fabric and you iron it, well, that's tickets. You're going to find it very difficult to get that stain out. Well, the same thing applies to fabric paint. Once you've heat set it, then it's very, very difficult to get it out. So what you can see from this is that if you were doing a large background area, the time that you would be spending would be putting the masking tape on. But the actual applying of the paint goes really, really quickly. And when you are doing large areas like borders of tablecloths and things like that, you sometimes find the fun part, which was the design that you had hand painted, has gone, and you've lost a bit of interest and the border becomes a bit of a chore. So this is a lovely way of doing a border that's really, really quick and easy, and it's not messy because the actual sticking down of the masking tape doesn't require to be messy. So you could do it in the evening while you're sitting watching TV, or you just got an hour or two here. You're not having to lay up everything all over the place. I'm not going for 100% solid background. I don't mind if there are some little light spots and dark spots, but I am trying to cover it as evenly as possible. I will be showing you what it looks like when the masking tape comes off, and I will show you that in the thumbnail. So remember I said let it dry. I'm going to do that, so you'll see later on that I will show you what it looks like when it's going to be 100% dry. Right, so it doesn't take long to apply this paint. You've got a very, very nice background. I've just used one color, which is called monotone, and you can see even just with a single color that it's going to be really nice. Remember that the color of the fabric, which in my case is a calico, so it's a sort of a off-white creamy color, that will be the background color underneath the masking tape. If you were using a white cotton, then you would have white. So just bear that in mind as you're choosing your fabric to do your design on. If you are painting though, it would normally be cream and white. So just a few minutes to actually color the fabric, and it looks good and I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to leave it to dry, and I will show you just with one little corner here that it's fairly easy to get the masking tape up off the edge, but I'm not going to pull it all off because the chances of transferring paint is just too much. Can you see what I'm doing? Sometimes it's really hard to know whether I'm in frame or not. My fingers are sticky. Okay, just so that you've got a little idea here. As I start to take the tape off, you will see that you have a really, really nice, sharp, crisp line underneath. Okay, so a little bit of patience now, just to let that dry, and then I will show you in the thumbnail what it looks like when I've taken all the masking tape off. Bye for now.